I'm part of the Atlassian group of company. I lead bunch of product portfolios in the company, and my main focus area is mostly on the developer persona and on the IT persona. So, most of the companies do have internal products and platform teams which takes care of your building PaaS services or building services which can cater to developers of your company. My focus area is My focus area is to build products and platforms which can cater to the developers of all the industries. So some of the products which the team builds are something called Obsgenie, which some of you might be aware of, which helps in alert management, Status Page, which helps in external communication, stakeholder communication, and JSM, which is more of an IT and service product, which helps beyond IT developer persona, but more beyond to your HR industry, your legal industry, your customer support industry. So that's where we all come from. Moving on, we have all heard about AI, correct? AI is like a buzzword. So it will be a shame if I don't use AI in my tech talk. So I have to talk a lot about AI. But if you look at it, most of the companies which are kind of solving the problems, they're using AI to solve your end consumer problem. And most of the time, your end consumer could be, let's say, a retail space where you're trying to use AI to probably optimize your inventory. Or it could be supply chain, which is trying to optimize, let's say, cost per shipment or how fast can you deliver a good. But we always, not most of the companies have an opportunity to solve for a customer which is inside your house, which is your developer. That is where my focus is going to be, to see how we can use AI and the kind of opportunities which we have in AI to solve the life of developer. So that's what we are going to focus on. I'll talk a little bit more about. This is more of a, you could say more of a teaser, correct? I'm just going to talk about what the opportunity is rather than how are we solving about it. Now, this is people who have probably worked in the Windows era are probably aware of this kind of a dialog box which used to pop up when you are on a Windows XP or a Windows server, correct? But the gist of this slide is, if you look at it, most of us, if you are running an organization or if you are a developer yourself, somewhere around you would easily spend at least once a day or two day in a week to just manage your service, operate your service. Now, this management could be anything, correct? You probably have a swarm of alerts coming on your way and you have to figure out what is the real issue and what is not. Or it could be just doing an upgrade on your infrastructure. Or it could be things in terms of whether we are meeting the SLA or SLO, what is the incident, how do I write a PIR and all those kind of things. So this is what, based on some statistics, people say most of us spend 20 to 35% of either our time or at a cumulative, at a team level, we spend that amount of time. Now, how do we get back that time, correct? So that we can solve more critical business problem, we can grow the company and actually bring more delight to our customer. So that's where we want to get to a point where, if you look at it, we as a developer, correct? You might work in different space. I see there are people coming from different companies. Like, for example, maybe there's a company which is working in the fintech space. Maybe there, the whole objective is how do I maintain an uptime SLA? Or if the objective could be, how do I increase my customer base or a MAU or a WOW? Or if I work in a supply chain, maybe my objective is to reduce cost per shipment. But let's say if I work in a oil industry, my objective is how do I do better oil exploration? But across all of this industry, wherever there is a digital phenomena which is going on, a tech-driven phenomena which is going on, there are two metrics which are universal truth, whether you are in an industry A versus or industry B, which is MTTR and MTD. We all try to be a point where our mean time to detect an issue or a mean time to resolve the issue gets as slow as possible. Just assume a scenario, correct? When you are probably going to your manager and you're saying that my service, I have detected all the issues before even it happened. Or my mean time to resolve, as soon as I detect an issue, it can be as less as probably like in less than 20 minutes or less than 10 minutes. I think that's the nirvana we all aim for. And this picture depicts that we would want to aspire that, we would want companies to solve that problem. And there are initiatives which happen. In-house, there are initiatives there are companies which are blooming just to solve those kind of a problem. Now, what are the challenges? Why can't we get to a mean time to detect to be 0? Or why can't we get to a point where mean time to resolve is probably under, let's say, 15 minutes or half an hour or 1 hour, correct? What are the challenges? Now, I mean, the challenges are huge. I'm just going to give you some flavor of some of the challenges which are very common. I mean, those are, you can say these are like universal truth. Most of the people will nod, saying that yes, they have seen this issue at some point of time in their career. Maybe they are facing it right away, or they would have seen it in a previous company, or whatever it might be, or their team is facing it if they're not doing this day-to-day activity. Now, the biggest thing is, before even if you can figure out what the issue is, correct? Most of the time, just the way we are all wired, we want to be safe. We want to make sure that we do as much as metering as possible, as much metering as possible, which also means that we end up having a lot more alerts, which means like we will have a threshold at 80%, maybe another at 85%, another at 90%, correct? And most of the time when an 80% threshold comes, we probably just acknowledge that alert and go back to sleep. Now, what happens is when a developer wakes up in the morning and he probably sees thousands of those kind of alerts, probably the real incident or alert is kind of hidden somewhere. Now, that's a real problem. And what does that mean? Your time to detect has increased, or your time to resolve has drastically increased, because you're not able to go to a prioritized list and figure out what issue you need to fix. And that's one of the main challenge why an MTTR goes very high. And you go to any dashboard, like for example, we have a product called Ops Genie and JSM, which helps in alert management. Now, if you look at that product, correct, most of the time we do see that most of the developers are spending time scrolling the list of the alerts they have. It's a huge volume. And if we have seen for most of our customers, the number of alerts is kind of exponentially growing day over day. We are not even talking about thousands of alerts, correct? At a company level, we are talking about sometimes hundreds of thousands of alerts, which they get on a day-to-day basis. Now, if somebody like a CTO office has to look at it, figure out what is really happening for my organization, it just becomes kind of impossible for them to chase through that and figure out what the real issue is. Now, that's just one, correct? Now, let's say you figured out an incident has happened. Now, what happened as a developer, correct? I'm sure there are some people who use Splunk for a logging system, or some people who use a Dynatrace for a metering system or a metric system. And then there are a lot of other systems, correct? A lot of other APM systems which you could use. Or you might have a change management, which is probably happening through a Jenkins pipeline. Or you might have an incident management ticket, which is either in Ops Genie, or maybe it could be in a product like PagerDuty. So you have a lot of these different tools where you can see what is the life of a developer, correct? Starting from your development of coding, of how are you pushing the code, and then how are you managing the code, and how are you monitoring the code. There are so many tools available. So even though when you have figured out an incident has happened, normally it takes an SME to figure out, to connect the dots between these different issues. Like for example, somebody would know, okay, there were 4 changes which were pushed to production yesterday. By the way, I see a similar alert, I see an error log, and maybe somebody who has been in a team for a couple of years can easily connect the dots and say, okay, that's the real issue, let me go chase it out. But let's say you have a new hire who has joined your organization. Now, to be honest, most of us survive on a tribal knowledge. The new hire is not easily able to ramp up and figure out and connect this dot. So what would happen? Most of the time he's going to do a phone a friend. He's going to call one of you saying that, hey, I'm stuck here. How can you help me? So the most powerful tool which we have seen, which developer use to kind of resolve that issue, is a Slack or an MS Teams or a Zoom, where they're kind of reaching out to their friends and figuring out, hey, can you help me here? The second, let's say you even figure out that there is an issue, correct? Now, let's say you are an owner of a payment service and something went wrong. Yeah, you chase, you look through your logs, you look at your metrics, and you finally figure out that there is some kind of a login failure, something has happened. So you assume that the issue should be in the login service. Then you chase and you go to the login service and talk to them and figure out, hey, is something going wrong there? Is some of your SLA is not working, SLO is not working? And they debug, they figure out another service, and they figure out, oh no, actually it's an identity service of Amazon or an Azure which has actually kind of stopped working, and that's the real root cause. So we do spend a lot of time doing this, running in a maze to figure out who the real faulty service is. Now, with the advent of interfaces and API, we all got the power of agility, correct? Which means there are APIs published by team A, I can consume those APIs and I can start using them. But the disadvantage is when we are trying to build a service graph, correct? Where we want to figure out who is dependent on which service. A failure in my service can cause what other failures. That's where we get lost. And that's where most of the time also gets spent. Now, this is one is about faulty service, correct? Figuring out faulty service. Similarly, there's also a issue of SME, which we just talked about, correct? You might know that the identity service has failed, but within your team, maybe there is one person who knows exactly, okay, the identity service has failed because probably somebody didn't configure the DynamoDB well, because that's where all the kind of registries were there. So figuring out that takes lot of finding the right people and also finding the right service. So you have to find the right door to knock on, and it is not just finding. So, and there are multiple doors. So that's where we lose a lot of time. Now, let's say you are a developer, you have figured out an issue, you're deep down, you figure out that you actually did a wrong rollout, and the rollout kind of created a catastrophic and your service is down. Now, which also means, let's say you're a part of an e-commerce company, which means your customers are not able to do a checkout. Now, in that kind of scenario, what happens is you're obviously trying to figure out what can you do. Maybe you did a wrong DB upgrade. Your schema was not kind of compatible with the version which you're trying to do. Now, as part of that, you're now trying to, and it's not an easy rollback, correct? If it was just a code deployment, you would have done a rollback, gone to a good state, and you would have done that. But this involves a lot of change. But at the same time, your internal stakeholders and external stakeholders are curious, are anxious to know what's happening. Obviously, you're deep down, you know what the gravity of the problem is. But at the same time, your stakeholders are unaware of what the problem is. And it is also one of the biggest owners, even though it is an important thing. We sometimes developers are so kind of buried down that it sometimes feels like a tax to kind of update our stakeholders. And stakeholder communication also is an art. Based on internal stakeholder and external stakeholder, you might have to kind of massage your communication in terms of what you want to kind of talk about it. You don't want to talk all geeks when you want to go to your external stakeholders, correct? You want to kind of talk in terms of language which they can understand. So that's another thing. Now again, this are some of the challenges, correct? By no means this is kind of a complete set of challenges which we as a developer face. There could be more challenges in terms of, like, for example, hey, how do I find out what are the casuals, even though there is no direct service dependencies, but there might be a casual relationship between two services. How do I find out that? And can I, before even an incident happened, can I inform them that, hey, this incident is now going to create another cascading effect on it, and you have to go and change on it. So this just talks about some of the key challenges we all face out. Now that's where AI come into picture, correct? Now, if you would have seen in the previous slide, correct? It is not that a lot of these problems are not solvable through computers. They could be done. It is just that most of them are repeatable tasks. Some of them are also knowledge which has been built over a period of time. Now, how do we take that out and codify that and bring it as part of a system so that we are no longer reliant just on finding the right person or the right door to knock on, but we can rely on somebody like an AI to solve that problem. Now again, just going back on the three axes, which I would assume that any companies which are in this space, they would want to tackle this three axes, correct? How do I detect an issue before the issue is even happened, or before the issue gets into a self-zero issue? Or how do I resolve the issue? Which is basically putting the right people at the right time in the right place. So that can actually kind of get you into resolution. And the third one is the nirvana, correct? If you can get to prevent, like before an even issue has happened, like for example, can you prevent an issue that, let's say you figured out that your CPU is kind of throttling. You're already hitting at 95%. What do? Your most common behavior we have seen across most of our customers also is that they go ahead and, let's say, increase their EC2 instance on AWS or on Azure. They go and increase their compute instance or whatever it might be. Can we prevent that? Can we automate some of them so that some of the mundane tasks are already taken care of, so that you can come back and then look at more strategic ways to solve that problem? But technically, you have put a bandage so that you can move ahead. Now, bandage is just a starting point, correct? Can AI go and get into a little bit of more of a surgical mode? That instead of just putting a bandage, can it upgrade itself from a nurse to a doctor? Can it just not do a bandage? Today, we are kind of scratching the surface with Gen AI, correct? Which helps you in summarization, which helps you in kind of looking at large languages and kind of summarizing that for you. But can you go a little bit more deeper? Can you be like, for example, can I automate a workflow for you, which can actually prevent an issue, which can, as soon as it figures out, like normally what we do as part of alert remediation, correct? You probably go increase some instance, you kind of restart some services, or you do different kind of sharding, or you kind of add more kind of SKUs or scale units to, let's say, a Kafka or whatever it might be. So this is what AI can do. I mean, again, I'm not getting into solution, and I would love to talk about it, and I'll probably cover a little bit of it at the end. But this is what potential of AI is. Now, just throwing some AI possibilities, correct? I mean, this is no rocket science. I'm sure we all as a developer would have thought at some point of time, can AI do this for me? Or forget AI. AI is probably something which we are using it in the last couple of years. But can I build a product which can help me do this? And I think with the advent of AI, it is much more possible. It is much more easier to do that. Now, just think about a scenario, correct? I mean, we talked about the alert noise scenario. You logged in, you were looking at your dashboard. Let's say you use one of the most favorite product called Opsgenie. Look into the dashboard, you look at all your alerts. Now, let's say there is another smart filter. Instead of the normal filters like, hey, sort it based on time, sort based on severity or whatever it may be, there is a smart filter. What it does is, it kind of groups your 1,000 alerts into probably only 20 alerts. It says that, this probably is I can club this 1,000 alerts into 20 groups because I know there is a relationship between these alerts. They seem very similar. I can do some fuzzy matching on top of it and say that, okay, I can club all these alerts together and I can define a different severity for the group. I can give you a different priority order based on which you need to tackle. Now, just think a life of a developer, especially a developer who comes in the morning and he sees that instead of looking at 1,000 alerts to act on, he just looks at 20 groups. His life has now all of a sudden has come a little bit much more peaceful because he knows exactly that he only has to act on 20. And the beauty is we have also given him a priority order, saying that, hey, let's look at this priority order and let's figure out what we can do and what we can't. Now, let's take this one step further, correct? Let's say I have a buddy for you. Today, who's your buddy? As I said, correct? You're probably pinging somebody on Slack or pinging somebody on Zoom, saying that, hey, I need help here. Let's say you reach out to your architect who can help you in that scenario. But let's say I kind of want to solve or simplify your life and also your architect's life. And there is an AI buddy who comes into the mix. What can AI buddy do? AI buddy can do multiple things, correct? Like, for example, AI buddy, as soon as you're looking at alert, maybe there's a doodle which is on the right and it pops up and says, hey, by the way, you're looking at this alert, you can ask me questions. Like, for example, you might ask a question, has somebody resolved a similar alert in the past? And it can give you a name. Or you can ask, hey, what was the runbook which they ran? Or what was the typical steps they ran? Can you help me with that? So that you can probably look at that Confluence page where most of our developers kind of document what actions they do. And you can look into that and you can figure out, okay, maybe this is something which I can also mimic and probably resolve the issue. So most of the time, the knowledge which we are talking about, tribal knowledge, correct, that is already in your system. Most of our developers and our customers of Atlassian, they use Confluence page and Jira heavily, where they document what they are doing as part of an alert. Let's say your AI buddy kind of goes and synthesizes all this information and categorizes them based on the alert group, based on the service, based on the severity, and you can ask them the question and they can give you the summary of it. Now, let's take this one step further, correct? We talked about how an AI buddy is always available to your help. Now, what if this AI buddy, what happens when you get a sub-zero alert, correct? Typical practice is you probably join a Zoom call and you are kind of in a more like a hot situation where everybody gets onto the call, they have to resolve the issue before they can log off. So all developers are in that and they are communicating ideas in terms of, hey, let's try this, let's try this. But let's say an AI buddy is also joined the same call. You invite the AI buddy also into the call. So AI buddy says, hey, by the way, I saw a similar issue by another team, totally a different team, which you're probably not interacting with them on a day-to-day basis. And by the way, they did these steps. Great. Which means you have one more person who has a rich mine of data who can help you there. Or let's say the AI buddy, let's say I joined, I'm in a different time zone. Maybe I'm in US and you were working on this issue for the last 12 hours. And I joined in your night. And as soon as I joined, AI buddy recognized that there is a new participant and he probably gives me a summary saying what are the things which has happened. And that's a big time, correct? Like, for example, most of the people who join late, they probably do a catch up. Hey, what has happened? What have we done? They might ask you the same set of questions. Hey, have you tried this? And then somebody will say, yeah, we have already tried this. So let's not spend time there. So AI buddy can probably help this, which can give you a neat summary. One of our customer, Domino's, who is a heavy user of Atlassian customer, they use a feature called PIR summary generation. So normally PIR reports, which we all write after an incident has happened, post-incident report, they run into pages. They sometimes run into 3 pages, 5 pages, which talks about 5 whys. It talks about what are the actions we can do and all those things. The CTO claims that she saves close to 80% of her time because she uses a PIR generation, and that gives her its right summary in terms of, okay, what has happened, what are the key actions, and what I need to follow on. Now, taking a step further, correct? We talked about a scenario where you're asking questions to AI buddy, and AI buddy is kind of helping you. Now, just think about it, correct? As soon as you log in, an incident has happened, and the AI buddy is already telling you, hey, I've already created an workflow for you, which is going to look at the logs, which is then going to increase your EC2 instance, then again monitor your APM metrics, and if it is fine, it is going to acknowledge your alert. That's a typical workflow which we all do. And you look at the workflow, the workflow seems fine, and you approve it, and that's it, you're done. So instead of you doing all the manual step of connecting to different data sources, doing those actions, the AI buddy could do that. Again, I'm just talking about scenarios or solutions which can be done. Now, whether the products or solutions which are doing that all right now is different, but AI has opened up our avenues to solve this kind of problems. So this is my last kind of a slide on this particular one. And I just want to cover this or end this with what we are doing in Atlassian, correct? In Atlassian, we do have primarily, there are multiple, I'm sure people are aware of Bitbucket. Bitbucket is one of the most prominent used repository tool. But beyond that, there are some tools which I want to talk more about, correct? Like, for example, if you look at Compass, we talked about single pane. Compass has been in market for the last quarter or two. It's GA. You can definitely try it out. Go to atlassian.com and you can try Compass. So Compass allows you in a very easy way. Let's say your favorite tool is GitHub for repository, and your favorite tool for alert management is Obgyn. Your favorite tool for APM is Splunk and a Dynatrace. You can easily, just in one click, you can connect all those tools. So it is going to give you a view of what's happening in the service, from change management to alert management to incident management to metric to SLAs and SLOs. Where are you not meeting your SLOs and all those things? So Compass definitely helps you there. I would definitely encourage to look into that. But going beyond, if you look at Obgyn and Status Page, those are all our products which are allowed by most by our developers, which has been around for quite some time. They help you in alert management. So some of the capabilities which I was talking about, correct? Those are the capabilities we are definitely thinking in those direction in terms of how do we kind of reduce your alert noise? Can we have an AI buddy for you, which can solve some of the problems which you're talking about? And then the last one is JSM, which is more in terms of getting into the IT space, the service space. Now let's take this journey a little bit, even though this talk is about developer, but JSM can take it one step further. It can not just, DevOps is the starting point of your operation, but your operation proceeds further. It gets into your customer support. It talks about your HR. It talks about your legal. They're all the touch points where your customers, the internal and external, kind of interact with. And JSM kind of solves that, gets into that. Now, there is a lot more we are kind of announcing into this space where what kind of capabilities which are going to come live very soon. So I would encourage, we have a large event called Team 24, which is coming up just next month in US. It's going to be streamed live. So definitely hop into it, and you will know more about what are some of the problems which I talked about. We are going to solve, and we are going. You guys can actually have a hand on it. You can join our waitlist program, and you can try some of these capabilities which are going to improve your developer productivity. Thank you.